So, you know, if we have, for example, a community or a government or a company where everything is super stable, everything's just going clock at a clock at a clock at a clock at. Everybody knows their roles. Everybody kind of believes the same thing, believes in the same way of organizing things, and buys into that totally. That's all fine and good. I mean, some of the people who are outliers will tend to be sort of dismissed and weird, and they'll go their way and not have that much impact. But when something changes, when the environment changes in some way, the system evolves, whatever, or there's some shock to the system, an environmental shock, economic shock, natural shock. Suddenly there's a need to do things differently, to be different, and you have lost, you have suppressed difference, so you don't have the difference available to you to adapt to what's going on. And if you are valuing diversity and disturbance, you're moving into a realm where things are less predictable, and your whatever order you have needs to come from how you are using diversity and disturbance rather than from keeping everything the same. And that's a new, chaos and complexity theory and ecosystem theory, ecology, cover that from a scientific perspective, and that diversity and disturbance are natural phenomenon. They're ever present, and we can suppress them, but they don't necessarily go away. They get pushed into a lower level that's not so obvious, and very often they will show up at unpredictable times in ways that further disturb the system. So ultimately, if you can, it is more sustainable to respect and engage with and handle diversity and disturbance well, and you can sort of roll with the punches, as they say. And if we're seeking wisdom, we engage. Diversity is not just demographic diversity; it's people having different perspectives or suddenly behaving differently. And disturbance, any kind of problem is a disturbance. Disagreements are disturbances and diversity. So if the system is generating diversity and disturbance, we take that as a signal that something is going on that should be addressed, rather than we should suppress it. If you have a pain and the pain is persistent, you should take that as a signal to go to the doctor, or if you know where it's coming from, to do something about it, rather than just taking painkillers. The signal here in this sense is sort of means symptom. And because we really want things to be whole and smooth and beautiful and all the rest, we can take it as a stimulant to invest some attention and resources into finding out what's going on and addressing it. In particular, going deeper, because we know as wisdom seekers that what seems to be is not always what's really there. And so we're going to do deeper inquiry. We're going to explore what's going on beneath the surface, beneath what we thought was going on. There may be dynamics happening in the real world or in people's internal worlds that we're not aware of, that are generating this disturbance, and to bring it out and make the unconscious conscious and start addressing it. And if we do that really well, we will have lives that are more, that have more benefit, more needs are being served, and our collective lives will be better, our individual lives will be better, and we will be able to better navigate the complexity and change. The real world is actually quite complex and always changing, and to the extent we can take that in and deal with it well, we are more able to navigate the rapids of change as Robert Theobald said, and the complexity, the the many different dimensions of what's going on, that we can, when we oversimplify, we miss big chunks of reality. So being able to really get into the complexity of what's there, not be overwhelmed by it, and address it and be informed by it, and become part of the complexity of reality, become part of the changes that are happening, and flow with them instead of resisting them or ignoring them. There's a lot of wisdom in that. So there are many potential things. This is what I came up with for that. And of course, DF and nonviolent communication. Restorative justice, which is taking, somebody has committed a crime and they are engaging the people who did the crime, the people who were affected, impacted by the crime, and the community at large, and they're interested in how do you heal this and bring the community more together. It's sort of like a couple that has an intense disagreement, and to the extent they really handle it well, they come together even stronger than they did before. Often, make love after the argument. It's like we really see each other and and appreciate each other even more. Multiple viewpoint drama, Dan and Vera Smith stuff is very relevant here. Transformational mediation. In some practices, they don't even care whether it gets resolved or not. They're going for what are the assumptions, the levels of consciousness, the dynamics that if we inquire into them, this disagreement will be part of our, people's growth of the people involved in it. And I've seen fishbowl used this way a lot. You have arguments between two sides, or the women don't like the way they're being treated in the meeting. You put, have the women in the middle while the men sit around. The women talk and the men listen to the women talking to each other. And then after 15 minutes or whatever, the men go into the circle and the women listen to the men talking with each other, and it goes back and forth several times. That's another digestion, could be put under digestion of mobilizing polarization too.